Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nathan Shapura, political advisor at the European People's Party, and on behalf of the EPP, welcome to another episode of EPP Family Talks. Over the past several weeks, we've been talking to several of our EPP leaders about the ideas and projects they've been working on during this time of coronavirus crisis. Today, it is our great pleasure to welcome Doris Pack, former member of the European Parliament, longtime president of our EPP association, EPPWomen, and president of the Robert Schuman Institute. President Pack, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me.
We've started all of these episodes by asking the different leaders from our EPP family about, just personally speaking, how they've been doing during these past several weeks, how they've been coping. So we would ask that to you as well. What's a typical day been like for you?
Well, I think it was difficult for me to see how can I manage it. And everybody who knows me, running and flying and driving all the time, I was astonished. I could manage it. I feel well. I have no problems. And I discover things which I never had in mind to discover. I'm going to walk in the afternoon, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And I discover in the forest close to my house, I discover places and ways where I never have been in 50 years. So I think for me, it's really, a kind of discovery. On the other hand, I have time, which I never had before. In the morning, I'm reading newspapers, printed newspapers. I don't like so much the one in the mails. The printed newspapers, my regional one, to know what's going on in the region, what are the new ideas, and so on and so on. And then the famous German one, Süddeutsche, and then Le Monde, because I'm living close to France, and I'm very much engaged in German-French relations, and I'm working also as Secretary General of the High Council of French and German Culture. So you see, I'm totally occupied, and not to forget that I like very much to cook. And now I have time to make experiments in cooking. And I have a friend of mine, we are together, we are cooking, we are liking fresh cooking. So this is really very experimental this time. On the other hand, when I have finished to read everything, then I have to go to my emails. And then I have also to read all these press infos of my beloved countries you know very well, in the so-called Balkans, in Southeast Europe, where a lot of things are going beyond the pandemic. They have a lot of political problems to solve. And then sometimes I'm tweeting on this. Sometimes I'm calling our colleagues there to listen to them and to give perhaps some helpful hand. Mostly it will not be accepted because I have there really very stubborn ideas sometimes. So I think I'm fully booked the whole day, and I read. I like to read, and when I'm busy in my business, and when I'm walking, when I'm driving, and so on, I have not so much time to read. Then I'm reading only thrillers. Now I try to get at least also a look in totally other books, and this is something which is also very important. You see, I'm really, the whole day fully booked. And in the evening, we have the television, we have other possibilities. Sometimes I'm even playing. I don't know if you know backgammon. So that's something which I like to do, or Rubicon, I don't know if you know it. So you see, I'm really booked by myself.
Well, we want to finish this interview like we have with our other EPP leaders with some other more personal, more informal questions. And you've given me a lot of ideas for things I can ask you about your cooking and the things you're reading. But for now, let's move on to something maybe you mentioned as well, which is the region you're living in. You're living close to France. You mentioned several regional publications you're reading. Could you just give us an update on your region, on Germany itself, your home country, which is, of course, led by Angela Merkel from your party and our EPP party, the CDU.
I just coming back to my region. You know, I'm living in one of the 16 Länder, the smallest one, which came only in 1959 from France back to Germany, where we have been before. So I think I'm running a lot of different organizations, and therefore I have in this time also, how to say, to cancel a very famous festival, theater festival, the only French-German theater festival. And so it makes me working also on such things, so French-German ones. And on the other hand, we just learned by the lockdown, by the giving up a little bit of the lockdown, that the adult learning organizations are also now opening the Volkshochschulen, we say in Germany. I'm the president in the region here. So I think these are also things which are occupying me. On the other hand, you asked what's going on in Germany. I know that Angela Merkel, as leader in Germany, is also in Europe and above Europe very much liked for the kind of managing this crisis. And I think not only the voters for the CDU in Germany are in favor of her now. A lot of people, I think the majority, is saying she's doing a great job. But she's not doing it alone. She's running a coalition government, which is not so easy. And before the pandemic, we had a lot of problems with the Social Democrat and Christian Democrat coalition. And now I think they've found together and they've worked together, because it's not a party question, it is a citizen question. And therefore, we can only praise the government's working. And everybody should know that Germany is a federal state. We have 16 lenders with 16 prime ministers, with 16 parliaments. So it is not so easy to bring all these different authorities together, because you have to know that in Germany, school and kinder, everything is not done in Berlin. It's done in the local, in the regional, in the Länder situation. And therefore, Mrs. Merkel and her government, they have also to come together with these prime ministers. And they're coming together via video each week, more or less, or even more. And they discuss the different things they have to allow or to forbid. It's not so easy, but at least they managed it. They managed it to come together. But you should know, we have not in all the different lenders the different problems, the same problems. We have just heard today from Sachsen-Anhalt, where we have a CDU-run government. They are opening more things which others do. But if you see, Sachsen-Anhalt has less numbers of corona, and so I think very much less numbers. So I think they do a little bit more, but they do it in discussion with the different counterparts. And I think it is going well, and it's not so easy, because there's not one in Berlin who says it's going like this. And what we also face in Germany, I think perhaps in other countries as well, I don't know, but in Germany, some people have also asked the Constitutional Court in some lenders and in the Constitutional Court, the national one, to find out if there are illegal things done by the government, so by the measures which have been taken. So, and if they say it, the governments have to follow. In my region, there was a Constitutional Court which was against the fact that only jobs until 800 quadratkilometer can open. They gave a special measure. All of the governments did it. 800 meter quadrat. And there was people who went to the Constitutional Court, and the court said it's not okay. Now this is cancelled. Now it is open, but everybody has to take his mask, and everybody has to take 1.5 meters in between. So I think there is not, how to say, nobody wants to make a damage to the democracy, democratic institutions. But we have to see also in such situations which we never had after the Second World War, this pandemic, it's the first time. I think we should pay attention not to destroy democratic institutions, but nevertheless take care of the health of the citizens. And to give at least one other example, the government in Berlin was supported even by, in mostly everything until now by a high majority of the opposition parties as well. So I think we show that we try to not to neglect democratic institutions, but at least to do the best for the health of our citizens.
I want to ask you about your work as president of EPPWomen and as president of the Robert Schuman Institute. First, a more general question, a more philosophical question. You have many years of experience at very high levels in European politics. I know you know quite well Chancellor Merkel and have worked with her for many years, and you've just praised the work that she's doing and mentioned several other examples. When you look back, from your perspective now over the past many years, how would you compare this current crisis to previous ones? And I mean, maybe a fitting question after you've just shown your European face mask there, which is a powerful symbol, I think.
I think we never had anything like this after the war. And I myself had no experience of the war. Therefore, for me, it is the first time where a lot of things are not allowed, where we are ordered to do things which we perhaps would not do if we should not be ordered to do it. So we have to follow, we have to respect. And therefore, I think what is needed in these times is trust in the leaders. And therefore, we have a chance. We have very good leaders, and they help us to be trustful. So at the end, you see, we have a problem with this being trustful, because we have a lot of people who say this, others saying this. There's researchers, there's scientists, there's virologists. They have different meanings, different opinions, and sometimes people is lost in between these opinions. But science is not stable. It is changing with the new numbers of corona and so on and so on. So we have to be trustful, and therefore I think it is difficult for people who are, how to say, we are free, we are our own masters. It's difficult for a lot of them. Those who have problems to overcome. I don't have any problem to overcome. I'm at home, but I don't have kids whom I have to care. I don't have home office where I'm hindered to do it because my husband is not helping me to care the kids, or I have to make a lot of things which I have to do at the same time. And this is something which is, how to say, not really easy to manage. So once again, we didn't have any crisis like this. The financial crisis was touching us in a total other way. Most of us were not touched by this, but this is really, how to say, addressing every, from the child, even the little child of a month or 2 months, until the elderly people. And this is something which we have to face. And there is not a book where we can read how to do it. And therefore, perhaps politicians even made some mistakes, perhaps. But as long as we haven't the result, not overcome the pandemic, we cannot say the things were false or they were right. We did the best, and every politician, I think, did the best in the interest of the population.
Well, let's get a little more specific now. So with regards to your work as president of EPPWomen, 2 questions. So the first one is about the challenges, the second one about solutions. So first, even in normal times, women face certain challenges uniquely. And in this time of pandemic, we see particular vulnerabilities, whether economically or in terms of increased threats of domestic abuse, domestic violence. What would you say are the biggest challenges facing women now in particular during this crisis?
Yeah, people doesn't know perhaps what is EPPWomen. EPPWomen, I think we should say a little bit what it is. It is the organized association inside of the European People's Party of women. We have ones for youth, we have ones for women, for elderly people, for workers. And I'm for a long time now running this association. And we are, how to say, trying to get the voice, to be the voice of women in the party. And therefore, we are meeting 3 times a year, at least 50 women from 33 countries, 35 countries, it depends who is coming. and leading women in the European People's Party families, sister parties. And we are coming together. And this year we couldn't come until now because it was foreseen for March, we couldn't. So then we had foreseen in July a summer academy where we are discussing during 2.5 days topics which are important to put them through in the EPP party. And then we have in wintertime, we have our General Assembly where we are discussing what has been putting in a resolution where we are discussing the work of the year and the next year. So everything has been cancelled now because we do not know how it's going on. But we put, this is not, how to say, on paper only. The executive or the board of the women came together via video for the first time. I think it spares a lot of money. If we don't have, how to say, to bring 50 people together, if we only have to bring the board together, it's very easy to do it. And I think it was nice to listen to the people, and we discussed a little bit the situation in the different parties, in the different countries. And though I think we have seen that we are facing more or less the same problems, not the same solutions somewhere. And therefore, it was very healthy to meet via video, and we proposed to come together in September for our summer academy, which will be autumn academy, and then in November for our General Assembly. Yes, but what is the problem? And the problem of this pandemic will overshadow the whole year's work. Because if you look who is giving the advices to our politicians? You don't find a lot of women as scientific people. They are not very much engaged. And I give you a very good example in Germany. We have a famous university, Frankfurt an der Oder, where is a very famous National Academy of Science in Germany. Gives a lot of important advices. So they have been asked to give also an idea of lockdown. They did it on the 13th of April. I don't want to nominate everything what's in this paper, but this paper was signed by 25 people. Under the paper, 2 women. And can you imagine, in this paper, not any word of the children and culture was mentioned. So I think there is lacking a lot of views which are perhaps more taken in consideration by women. I'm not blaming the men. It is lacking. We are both part of this mankind. And if we are not working together, there is lacking a lot of good ideas. And so I come back to this question, what is the problem? I know that 75% of the households of the single households, single parents households, are run by a woman. Can you imagine? She was working until now. She can no longer work. Perhaps she can even not make home office. But even if she had to make home office, she had to care the children because there is no schooling, there is no kindergarten. So these problems are much more burdening women than men. Okay, perhaps this pandemic brings men to thinking that they also should be more caretaker as they have been before. It would be fine. But these problems of children, these problems of kindergartens have not been taken in consideration, never ever. But it is a big problem because you know very well, if the children are at home, a lot of things are possible. A lot of violence is possible, not only gender, also misabuse of children are much more, it's much more possible than if people are doing their daily work as ever. So these are discussions which we should really do during our work in this year. We came together in the video conference to speak in our autumn academy with experts on the different problems arising in this pandemic situation, and perhaps giving an idea for the next pandemic, perhaps, which will not come, but we should be prepared. Yes, this is one thing, but it's not only a question of women, but it is also a question of women. And sometimes more than for men, because we have asked women to work outside house. We have supported them to being well educated, to get a good job. But this together with kindergartens which are closed, it's nearly not possible. So I think there should have been a plan to open kindergartens partly for some hours, for some days. So I think there are a lot of possibilities where women on the local and the regional level should have been really involved early at the beginning. But perhaps everybody looked on business, everybody looked on restaurants. It's okay, because there are jobs which are going lost and a lot of money should have to be invested. But it would not have been so money using if we would have had a better plan for dealing with this schooling, with this healthcare, with this care of children.
President Pack, we just have about 3 minutes left, and I have two other questions that I want to
Yeah.
ask you. So one of them is, of course, a lot of the high-level, high-ranking people in your own association, EPPWomen, are dealing with these solutions across the continent. So
Yeah.
are certain stories, certain solutions you'd like to highlight in particular?
I don't think that I can highlight now one thing, because I see so many things. It would be not correct if I mentioned once. But I want to say something else, because you had mentioned that I am the president of Robert Schuman Institute.
I'll ask you.
This is something which is also important to know. We can give it during this pandemic. We organize the schooling, not the political education and the training for young politicians in Eastern European countries, in Southern European countries. We do it with the Robert Schuman Institute, even via webinars. It is great. It is working very well. And I want to give an advice to people listening to us, that they should go on the website of the Robert Schuman Institute, which is situated in Budapest, and it is working now since 1991. And we have wonderful results. And I wanted to say it, because it's a moment where we can see that even via video conferences, we can do a lot of work. And one thing is good, no, perhaps other things as well, but one thing is good of this pandemic is that we just have really realized what is possible with our communication digital systems. It's great. So if we use it, then I think that is something which we learned from this pandemic.
Well, just one final, very short policy
Yeah.
question. That is, in just a few seconds, could you summarize what exactly does the Robert Schuman Institute focus on?
Yeah, but that's Robert Schuman, as I said, we are giving political education for young politicians in the European people's family. We are training them in democracy, in rule of law, even in gender. So I think all these questions which are important to make a democracy really a democracy. And there, we did it now since 91, and you can imagine how many young people now, older and older, have really, how to say, earned a lot of this formation, of this training, and we do it everywhere. We do it in Georgia, we do it in Ukraine, we do it in Kiev, we do it in Sarajevo, wherever. So I think this is really a great job, and it is very, very good done of these people, but it is financed by the EPP and by the Robert Schuman Foundation. So I think this I wanted also to mention, because it's part of my way. I'm not working, I had to say, in the office there, but I'm the president, and I have to take care that the things continue or in the next years. So we need our party, our families, sisters in the party of the EPP.
Thank you for your perspective and for sharing those ideas with us, and for updating us on the work that is going on. I have two very quick, final, as promised, final, more personal, informal questions for you. And they're both based on things which either you said at the beginning of this interview or which I'm looking at right now on the screen. And the first one is, you mentioned before we started recording, you mentioned something very interesting about the artwork behind you. And I wondered if you could just tell people what you were telling me about. I think it's the statue behind you.
Behind me, this little statue, that is a golden euro, which was as an award during 20 years for famous singers in the television in Germany, the golden euro. And when I was, and it is a sculpture done by a sculpture of my region, and it was even done by the television of my region. So I think, but this was Germany-wide, this Golden Europe. And when I left the European Parliament, the Prime Minister of my country and the leader of my party, Mrs. Angela Merkel, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, she has organized to find such a Golden Europe, and they found it somewhere in North Rhine-Westphalia in an Antiquitäten shop, and she gave it to me and said, the Golden Europe was a Golden Europe, the Dame of Europe.
That's a great story and a great memory to have associated with that piece of art. And my final question is, you mentioned one of the things you're doing you have been doing during this past few weeks, along with all of your reading, watching television, playing backgammon. You mentioned cooking as well. I've been doing a lot of cooking. I think a lot of people have. Is there a recipe, maybe a new recipe, which you have discovered, which you would recommend?
Yeah, but it is a fish one. It is great. If you take fish and you put it in oil, close, and you leave it, I think 15 minutes in your oven, it's great. It's great. Then you have to make something around, but it is easy. It's not stinking in the kitchen. It is great. It's very easy, and I like it very much. I did it with several fishes, and it works with each fish. So it's really great. If someone wants to have a recipe, I have another one, a very fine one, but it's a bit longer, and it is with a sauce, with ingwer sauce, and it's great. You can send me on Facebook, and I will send it by messages if there is a possibility, if there is a need for. Yeah, but I found it also not. I didn't invented it. I found it somewhere, and I copied it, and I did it. But it's great.
Doris Pack, former member of the European Parliament, president of EPPWomen, president of the Robert Schuman Institute. Thank you so much for your time and for the work that you're doing. We hope to see you again in person soon. We wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you very much. The same for you.
And to all of our viewers, thanks for tuning in to this episode of EPP Family Talks. Please join us again tomorrow for our next episode, Tuesday, May the 5th at 9 a.m. on Instagram. We will be speaking with Olgierd Geblevich, president of EPP Group in the European Committee of the Regions. See you then.